Nerdrotic.com.
Well, the 23 weeks of Star Trek have begun, or what I like to call them, the 23 weeks of hell. Welcome to Nerdrotic, and we are here to cover Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 1, Second Contact. And in keeping with the theme of seconds, or number 2, Alex Kurtzman has just dropped another one. There's an old adage around these parts: Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek is Star Trek made for people who don't like Star Trek by people who do not like Star Trek. And you can add one more. Star Trek Lower Decks is Star Trek made by people who don't like Star Trek, who are desperately trying to understand why nobody likes their Star Trek. Before we get started, if you could please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. It really does help independent content creators stay competitive against the giant corporations like CBS, who like to abuse the copyright system on this very platform to suppress critical voices of a TV show. We'll see how much I get away with on this video. Now, of course, I am not the biggest fan of Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek, and Star Trek Lower Decks is filled with Kurtzman New Trek tropes. And as with any other Alex Kurtzman joint, it's filled with somebody else's ideas executed poorly. Now, apparently this show is supposed to be a comedy, intentionally funny, and I challenged it in my last live stream to make me laugh once, and I will say I had a single mild chuckle almost come on, but it didn't quite come out. That's not to say there isn't a lot of laughs with Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek. It's just unintentional. Star Trek Discovery Season 2 was hilarious, and giant flowers in space at the end of Picard had me in stitches. And here's the thing, there might be some actual talent behind this show, but it's always going to be limited by Alex Kurtzman. And we've already seen Star Trek parodies before, done so much better. As a matter of fact, there's one out there right now that started out as a Star Trek parody, and now it's the official Star Trek. Of course, it's the Orville, which has not been canceled quite yet, and it still has a third season, which will be better than anything Alex Kurtzman can produce. And of course, we'll always have Galaxy Quest, but it's the Orville and Rick and Morty this show borrows the most from, and that's how far Star Trek has fallen. So we follow some insignificant crew members on a not so prominent ship, just like in the Orville. This one's named the Cerritos, which is named after a town in California, just like the Orville, which sounds a lot like Oroville, which is a town in California, and so on. And our crew members are Ensign Mariner, who is the main character, and she is capable and good at everything, smart and sassy, and the only thing keeping her down is herself. Think Michael Burnham with a lot of forced humor. Then there's Ensign Tandy, who's a brilliant scientist who's excited about everything. Think Tilly with a lot of forced humor. There's Ensign Rutherford. Think Cyborg from Teen Titans. And Ensign Bulmer, who will be the butt of everyone's joke, who was voiced by Jack Quaid from The Boys. There's Lieutenant Shax, a reckless male, and Commander Ransom, a reckless male. And there's Dr. Tiana, think Dr. McCoy as a female cat. And it's rounded out by the very capable Captain Freeman. But there's a little family twist. Ensign Mariner is Captain Freeman's daughter, and she is forced on her by her admiral husband, which doesn't remind me at all of Captain Mercer in the Orville being forced to serve with his ex-wife Kelly as XO. So how was the episode? And I did try to watch this with an open mind because just like you, I want good Star Trek and I don't really care where I get it, but I know I'm not going to get it from Alex Kurtzman, and I wasn't disappointed. This show was not good, nor was it funny at all. Captain Freeman calls in Ensign Bulmer to her office because she wants to monitor Ensign Mariner. Obviously, because this is her daughter, but this is supposed to be a mystery at this point. She wants Ensign Bulmer to catch her in the act of breaking a rule so she can get her off the ship as quick as possible. We get some pretty basic holodeck humor where Ensign Mariner has a program of a bunch of naked men working out, which clearly offends the clearly lesbian Tandy. Reckless male Commander Ransom ends up getting bit by a bug during Second Contact, which brings a zombie virus onto the ship. Ineffectual male Cyborg goes on a date with a character I didn't bother remembering the name of, which gets screwed up because he's ineffectual, partially due to the fact that his new cyborg technology is malfunctioning. Ensigns Mariner and Bulmer miss all this because they're on the planet helping the populace with Second Contact, Of course, we have Bulmer monitoring Ensign Mariner, and he thinks he catches her in the act of selling Federation equipment illegally to a local populace, but of course, she is just helping out local farmers because bureaucratic Starfleet wasn't acting fast enough. More of that Kurtzman trademark disrespect for past Star Trek, which I'm sure will endear himself to all of those new Star Trek fans that this show is obviously going to bring in. Meanwhile, on the Cerritos, there's a lot of excessive gore and people yelling and screaming at each other and running away from zombies. Ensign Bulmer ends up scaring the farmers and a giant spider, and he spends much of the episode getting suckled by that spider. Turns out the spider's saliva is the cure for the zombie virus, and that's where the episode ends. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a lot goes on because it doesn't. A lot of forced situational humor that lacks the most important element, humor, a lot of excessive dialogue, a lot of modern vernacular like, that's what I'm talking about and you're my bitch, a lot of snapping and pointing, but again, missing the two basic elements of a Star Trek comedy and Star Trek. Sure, there's the uniforms. Sure, the Cerritos kind of looks like a Federation ship, but that's about it. This plays out like a poorly written Rick and Morty episode as a Star Trek parody. And of course, there's that Cal Arts Go Animate style, which doesn't work at all. And more importantly, it doesn't make any sense. If you're going to do a proper animated Star Trek parody, I would follow the model of the Venture Brothers, not Rick and Morty. And on top of that, I would have asked Jackson Public and Doc Hammer of Venture Brothers to do it. The problem is Alex Kurtzman and his ilk don't want to hire anybody who knows more about Star Trek than they do and are more talented than they are, which is the majority of Hollywood. In truth, the only way an animated Star Trek parody would work is if the other two shows in the Kurtzman Star Trek universe were working, which they clearly are not. As bad as Lower Decks is, and it is bad, this still might be the best Star Trek that Alex Kurtzman has produced because he is not directly involved with it. That being said, his lack of talent, which I like to call the singularity of suck, still overshadows this production. His philosophy towards Star Trek still prevents this show from being funny. I can tell you how every single episode is going to play out. Basic bitch situational humor where a dumb male who will mostly be Ensign Bulmer will get into a predicament that the very sassy and resourceful Ensign Mariner will get him out of. And the secondary plot will be a female character getting into a situation that is caused by A, a dumb man, B, an insecure man, or C, a reckless man, or D, all of the above. That's how Second Contact went down, and we'll just have to see how the next 9 episodes play out, but I'm guessing I'm not going to be wrong because I've seen all of the Alex Kurtzman Star Trek, and I have yet to see a good episode, and I know his MO. So join me as we travel together down the 23 levels of hell that's going to be 23 weeks of Alex Kurtzman Star Trek right here on this channel. Of course, I will be discussing this on all of my live streams. The Inquisition with Doomcock, the Nerdrotic Nooner, my solo live stream, and of course, Friday Night Tights at 2 p.m. Pacific time. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.